Hello. Today we're doing a different kind of video than I've ever tried to make before, but I always like to try to take inspiration from the things that I'm enjoying currently on YouTube. And something that I've been enjoying watching recently has been process videos, how people make their content. So I thought maybe it might be interesting for me to share my process and how I make the videos that I make for YouTube, specifically Booktube. So I think that this could be of interest to anybody who is looking to make relatively straightforward YouTube content. The video I documented making is, I would say, kind of a medium difficulty one for Booktube, but probably a pretty straightforward video that anybody could make, even if they're newer to the process. And yeah, I thought I would show you just everything I use to film, how I come up with ideas, etc., etc. So with that being said, today we are going to look at how I make Booktube videos, and the video that I filmed myself making is my monthly wrap-up. So first, when I'm getting ready to film, I check my idea log and my calendar that I keep to see what video is up on the docket for me to film. I always film an end of the month wrap-up, so that one is a pretty straightforward idea, but I also keep track of ideas that I might have for future videos in this little notebook, and then I create folders for every video that I'm thinking about filming in my Finder on my MacBook. And yeah, I just have my own dedicated tab for this. As soon as I finish filming, I scoot them up, but I try to keep them roughly in order of what I need to film, and that is where I store all of my files, and I can just sort of work through my folders as I need to. This is something I started doing towards the beginning of when I started working on YouTube, and it has been a good way for me to keep track of everything that I am looking to film. Then you're gonna need a place to film, so I thought I would show you a few different setups that I have and kind of why they work. So on Booktube, obviously we're talking about books, so having books in the background in evidence can be helpful just to sort of illustrate to people what the content is. My favorite place to film is my main classics bookcases out in my living room. There's also really great light out there, but that light is very dependent on what time of day it is, and sometimes I just don't have the right lighting. It's also quite a large room, so there are parts of it that are more difficult to light than others. If I can't film there, my second favorite place to film is in my office with my bookshelves. There is a big window that almost always has good lighting, so that's sort of my default place to film. For a while, I was also using one of the couches in my living room to film. Again, the lighting for this one gets a little tricky just because there is a window sort of to the side, so that can create some unusual lighting. I will sometimes film in front of this little book tree in my bedroom because in the mornings the light is very nice in there, so sometimes I do my mid-month check-ins in that filming spot. And then two places that you don't see as often, one is this other couch in my living room looking back towards my dining area. I just think that the lighting there is particularly tricky, so really you only see that in vlogs at nighttime with the lights on as sort of a check-in thing. And then this other bookshelf in my main living area that I actually really love, but the lighting here is just very tricky because there's no windows opposite it. Now, you've been hearing me talk about the lighting a lot because I am like a cat. I follow the sun basically for my filming light primarily. I really like working with natural light whenever possible. I just think that it looks the best. Because I am not a professional photographer, I struggle to get these box lights that I do have as backup to look as nice as I would like them to. I feel like I can get myself to look quite nice, but for some reason I just don't always love the way that the books behind me in shot look. For whatever reason, I just have never loved that. So I will use that if I have to film at night, but otherwise my cats really like chewing on those cords and I just would rather not bother. I also sometimes will use a little selfie light, so that can also be helpful to sort of balance out light in a shot. Sometimes I'll just clip this little selfie light on to a side and go from there. Besides lighting, which I think is the most important thing you need, you're also going to need some kind of tripod to hold whatever filming device you have, which I will get to in a second. But as you can see, I was using this selfie stick for a long time for my filming because I was just using my iPhone for like the first 3 years that I filmed, but I have since moved on to this very nice camera. This is a Sony something or other. I will put all of the details of all of this equipment down in the description box, but I did my research and decided this was going to be the best camera for me once I decided to upgrade after 3 years of using my iPhone, and I've really enjoyed this camera. I do quite like the cool tone of the shots that it produces. I know not everybody enjoys that. Some people like a warmer frame. I kind of like the cool color tones that this produces. I also really like that it has in-camera audio that works really well. I actually have found that when I've plugged in sort of like these little mini boom mics, that it's actually, I don't like the quality of the audio as much. So I actually just don't use anything for audio. I have found that the audio just directly into the camera works great. And then I also love that there's that little flip up screen, because that means I can look at myself while I'm talking and it doesn't look like I'm looking not at the camera. So I know that Sony designed this to be their vlogging camera, and I think for my purposes I have found that it has worked out really well. I also have a little backup battery and a battery charger, because I think that that can be really helpful, especially with my talkative self, to have some extra power on hand. And then just a couple of other little bonus filming items. Sometimes I have this boom arm that I use if I want an overhead shot. I'll whip that out for every once in a while. I also have a mic that goes into my MacBook, and I use GarageBand if I need to record audio tracks, as I am doing currently for this video. I find that you get better audio quality going that route also for when I'm doing my podcast. So now that I have all of my equipment ready, I'm ready to prep this particular video. So for my monthly wrap-ups, I go through and I figure out what all books I'm going to include. I make notes in my reading spreadsheet throughout the month as to what I consider to be a hit, a surprise, or a disappointment, as well as any challenges that various books are addressing. And from there, I go through and I take all of the data in the main spreadsheet and put it over into my monthly charts spreadsheet, a little copy paste action. And from there, that helps me generate the charts that you see at the beginning of all of my monthly wrap-up videos. So I will go through and do that the night before I'm gonna film. I should mention that my monthly wrap-ups and my mid-month check-ins are the videos that I have the tightest turnaround time on, because I'm trying to get them out right at the middle and then right at the beginning of each month. So these are usually ones that I try to get a turnaround time of just a day or two. So as much as I can do beforehand, I try to do. So the night before I'm gonna film my wrap-up, I go through and I create all these charts so I have those ready to go. And then I go through and pull any books that I'm gonna need for the video. I also do this if I have any, like list type videos that I'm working on. Then the day of filming, after I've done my makeup and everything, I sit down and I get my shot set up. Some people I know like to just take stills from the videos themselves. I always pose like a fool for my thumbnail shots. I just find it easier to have separate images to work with later, which we will see once I get going. And then once I've done that, it's time to actually film the video. Oh, hello. Today we are wrapping up my reading for the month of April. I don't have really scripted videos very often. Really, I only do that for video essays. So for me, it's more about just kind of knowing what books I want to cover and kind of just ad-libbing on the spot about how I feel about those books. It definitely depends on the type of video. If it's a discussion one, I may have a little bit more preparation ready for it, but for this kind of video, I just know what books I want to include. I chat about them, and then I'm done filming. So now it seems like that should be the biggest part, but filming is actually probably the shortest time of anything it takes to do in preparing a video, because now we are about to get into the full editing phase, which is usually the most time-consuming part of the entire process. So you will, of course, need something to edit on. I use an iMac, and I have found that that has worked really well in terms of getting the right computing power I needed. When I upgraded computers when it was time to get a new one, I did upgrade some of the specs on the standard model. I'll put all of that info either on the screen or somewhere down below, but the iMac has been really great for getting everything I need done. And also, of course, I have my trusty companion as I'm getting ready to edit. The kitty cats keep me company. So with that, I take this little USB converter for my SIM card, take my memory card, plug it in, and I start to import all of my files. Depending on the size of the files and how long I was talking, that can take a while, but once I've got all of those loaded in, it's time to go over to Final Cut Pro. So in Final Cut Pro, I create a new library and then I import all of the files that I just downloaded into my new library and create a project. So once I have all of that kind of raw footage there, what I'm doing in my first round of editing is I do what I call the space edit. And this is something that I usually can have a podcast or an audiobook going on while I'm doing this edit, because really I'm just looking visually to cut out any of the likes and and spaces that I see. The longer you edit, the more you can just visually recognize those in the sound bar. So I go through and just do sort of a cut the fat pass. I find that taking this first pass through to just get out obvious spaces and obvious things that need to go results in a tighter cut overall. I've found over the years that that's just, for me, the best way to do it. Then once that's done, I will grab any of the images and other assets that I might need. By that I mean I have different like star rating graphics that I keep on hand ready to plug and play. I grab any book covers that I need to add in. I grab any graphs that I'm going to show, any other images that I need to put into the video, and then I start actually listening to and editing what I'm saying and making sure that everything is flowing the way that I want it to flow. So this pass takes, I would say, not quite as long as the space pass, but it's more tedious because I have to do all of the different image sizing. I have to kind of do the fine tuning of all of the editing, and this usually takes a while. The last thing I do is, if it is a video that has music, I will go and grab something from the audio library in YouTube. I will warn you that some people are never gonna like music in the background of videos for various reasons. Some of it's preference, and I know some folks have a hard time processing music at the same time they do listening to somebody talk. Some of it is figuring out how loud to have music in the background, but also just know that some people are just never gonna like that. So I think, especially because I now provide subtitles, I'm okay with just kind of keeping with my creative vision, acknowledging that that will not work for everyone. But anyway, this is not a video that has music, but if it were, this would be the part of the edit where I would go back and add that in. So once I have that ready to go, first I do an export of the video as audio only. I use that smaller file to upload to a transcription service that I use to help generate subtitles. I like to have a smaller file size to work with when I'm doing that. And then I export the actual video. I export in 1080p, which I think is the minimum that you need to be able to not be penalized in the YouTube algorithm. So even though I record in 4K, I export at 1080. And then it's time to upload. I did invest in the highest internet speed available to me because I was finding that one of the most frustrating parts of video creation was how long it was taking my videos to upload. But once I made that upgrade, it became much more manageable. But while I'm letting the file upload, I go to my thumbnail creation service, which is Canva. I did upgrade to the professional version, which for me, I feel like has been worth it, but I think most folks would probably be happy at least getting started with just the free version. I have a standard thumbnail that I always use for my reading wrap up with the titling, but as you will see, I've been trying to branch out a little bit in terms of my thumbnails, playing with having a different kind of standardization in the way that they look. So I created this initial thumbnail to help as kind of having a placeholder when I was uploading, but you will see I go back and play around with that later. But for now, I grabbed those photos that I took looking like a goofball at the very beginning before I started filming. I grabbed the one that I think looks the best. I adjust the positioning a little bit, save it, and export it. And I use that as my initial thumbnail. Then I decided to start playing around with this idea I've had about taking a standard shot of my main bookcase, having that as the background, and then taking the picture that I took for the video, cutting myself out of it with my stack of books, and having that sort of on top of it in the foreground as a way to help sort of standardize my thumbnails. So this is something I'm still playing around with, but in this video, this was just the first time I was starting to play with some of those elements, and I think I definitely had some tweaking that went on for a few days until I landed on what I think is going to be kind of my standard template going forward for all of my thumbnails. But this was the first time I was playing with some of that, so I played with the color, temperature, I played with how I had myself cut out, the brightness, all of that, and eventually I landed on a version that worked okay, but I don't know. I think I'm still working on tweaking that. But anyway, while I'm uploading, I always work on my thumbnail if I don't have it already ready. Sometimes when I'm working in Canva, if I have multiple pictures for different videos that I've pre-filmed, I will go ahead and work on them all at once. And I will say that that's a tip in general. Because this was a video that I needed to get out in a tight turnaround time, I only filmed one video when I was filming this, but normally I try to make sure I film at least 2, if not 3, sometimes even 4, though that's a little bit more rare. I try to film multiple videos at once so that I have things ready to edit whenever I get the time to work on that. So anyway, once I have my updated thumbnail, which you will continue to see change throughout the rest of this video, I see that there have been no issues found with the video in terms of copyright, etc., which makes sense since I didn't have anything like that on there. And I click that I'm eligible for monetization, and I let YouTube know that the only thing that might be objectionable is a little bit of light swearing. I submit my rating, and because I've been accurate in that in the past, I really very rarely have any problems with that. I say next, and then if I'd had my subtitles already ready, I could have added that, but in the meantime, I use one of my existing templates for my end screen. I add a card just because YouTube likes it when you have at least one card in there. I see that I'm good to go from copyright and ad suitability, and then I schedule the video for the next day. And bada bing, bada boom, and if I wanted to, I could be done there, but I have some additional tweaking that I will do from this point on. So in my description box, in my settings, I have a bunch of things preset to populate into the description box so that I can have a reminder of what all needs to go in there. I always put my lipstick color in the description because people ask about it. And then any books that I mention, I list out, and I will link to those with an affiliate link. Then I have some standard information about affiliate links I have, as well as my socials and standard disclaimers. So I fill out what I need to on the description beyond my standard things, including all of the different books that I talk about in the video. I start generating the different affiliate links that I need for each of the books so that people can go directly and buy the book if they want to, and I generate a little bit of affiliate money on that on the side. I should also mention that while I was uploading the video, I also was uploading my subtitle file to the service that I use, which is called otter.ai, which has, I think, a free version, but then also has an upgraded version, which is what I have, meaning I have pretty much unlimited minutes, which I need because I am a rambly ass bitch. So once that file is uploaded, I can see the transcription that it's generated, which I would say is usually about 85% accurate, but far and away my least favorite part of creating YouTube videos is editing the subtitles. I honestly hate it, and I need to find a way to like it more because I know it's important for people, but I personally do not enjoy it. But I go through and I edit all of those, usually the night before something's gonna go live. Then I go and upload that subtitle file into the subtitle area so that way YouTube can work on generating the timings the night before, which I will come back and edit the day of. So with that, I make some final tweaks. I tag anybody I mention in the video, and then I also fill in any timestamps that I need to include, which I like to do, especially for some of my longer videos if I remember. I know people appreciate being able to skip ahead if possible, and also for whatever reason YouTube likes it when you have that in there. So I put those in, and then I was still not happy with the thumbnail, so I actually ended up uploading 2 different ones. I just kept tweaking it for whatever reason. I just couldn't quite land on one I was totally happy with. Once all of that was done, it was time for it to debut. So I always go the day of to watch the video, and also I always give it a like, because if you can watch it right away and get likes, that helps push it in the algorithm. The more engagement you have earlier, the better. So, you know, if you won't vote for yourself, why should anyone else vote for you, is my line of thinking there. But I do always like to watch the videos after they go live, because I think I always have a different perspective on the video when it's live out in the world than I did when it was just on my own personal screen when I was editing. So I like to watch myself, I guess like a narcissist, but really just to learn if I felt like that was a good edit, if there were things I could have done differently, any things that I want to take on board for the future. And once that happens, you will start to get comments rolling in. I like to make sure that when a video first goes live that there's nothing, egregiously wrong about it. I can tell from watching it that I didn't leave any weird pauses in, but also from the comments it will let me know how the video overall is being received. And when it was first going live, it was performing at a pretty standard rate. There are a lot of analytics in YouTube Studio, but when the video first goes live, a lot of them are not yet available. So, I can't fully see my RPM or CPM, any of that kind of ad side of things. I won't know for a little while, but I go back and I make sure that from the comments things are looking good and I start responding. I will say I recommend kind of just picking a time to respond to comments and picking a time when you're in a good state of mind, because especially as your channel grows, you're always going to have a few outlier jerk comments that if you're not in the right mood can really ruin your day. But that being said, the vast majority of comments are very kind, very constructive, and make your day better. But I do go in and respond to comments kind of at set times so that I'm not obsessively looking at comments. I will say I know that that's not best practice from a YouTube perspective. They like you to be in there right away responding to comments, but I've found that often, especially on a weekday, that's just not something that I enjoy doing. But with that being said, now that the video is out in the world, I go back and I consider that video to be posted. I move all of my other videos up. The next day I take another look at the analytics just to see if there is anything wonky about how this particular video is performing. And if not, it's time to just hop back on the content creation train and create another video. So that's just a look at my particular video creation process. I hope that was interesting to someone or helpful to someone. I know like I said, I've been very nosy recently about how other people's creative process works, and this is not by any means perfect or ideal, but it is what has been working for me over the last couple of years. So let me know in the comments if you create YouTube videos, how this does or doesn't line up with what you do, if you learned anything, if there's anything that surprised you, etc. Let me know that in the comments below. But yeah, I think that will do it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, along with, like I said, links to as much of the equipment as I use that I can find. I will put that in the description box. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a good one, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!